DCM works. I'm all dressed up with nowhere to go. David has locked the doors. Please send help.
Hey Ben.
What?
Have you ever, do you ever want to watch something on YouTube
No.
that's fresh and interesting?
Oh,
No,
yeah, sure.
yeah. I thought you might. Well, I mean, you know what's good though is that we've got 2 new YouTube shows
Hooray.
to help you out with that problem of yours. It won't help with that thing that you had. You should probably go see a doctor about that.
No, I got a cream for it.
Oh, okay. They gave you like a cream. But if for your entertainment purposes, you can head to youtube.com/dcm.work. Actually, that doesn't work, does it?
It's
Just type in dcm.works.
just search DCM.works. I don't know what
into
the
YouTube.
channel URL
I don't know what it is
currently
currently, but it will eventually be DCM.works. I just haven't got that
It's
far
not
yet.
at the moment.
But just go into YouTube, search DCM.works, or check out the show notes, and you can find 2 new shows we've launched, Ben. Which are Through the Glass, which is my show, and
Potato Clinic,
which is your show.
A very redundant name, but we're sticking with it.
But we're sticking with it because it's bloody good.
Yeah.
And they're both kind of video essay shows.
Yeah.
Kind of in the vein of what we do here, but on a sort of more analytical level.
And shorter.
And shorter, and they're about 3 minutes. You can get a nice hit, get it in you, get out.
Well, mine's about 6 minutes.
Well, double, go down for 2. But yeah, check that out, show notes, and we'll see you there. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Art for Artists podcast, official podcast of DCM Works.
Whoa.
My name is David, creative director, lead writer at DCM Works, joined as always by my co-host Ben.
Bah.
Ah, that was terrible. Welcome back, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everything in between. If
Parents,
you're
grandparents,
dogs,
aunties,
legal guardians,
pets.
pets? Yeah, pets.
Cats.
If your cat's listening, put headphones in.
just-
Don't be rude to your cat. He might want to
You
listen
should
to
just
something else.
leave this playing when you go, out.
Oh, when you go out, see that your
Yeah.
cat doesn't get bored?
Well, so your cat learns, Australian
I've heard-
swears.
Oh, like,
So he
he
comes
just
back
walks
and the
back,
cat's
he's
just
like, hey, what's up, cunt?
Yeah.
You're like, cat.
Alright.
There's, people leave their TVs on for their animals when they go out, which is an American thing, and I think that's insane.
Really?
Yeah. But this week,
I
Ben,
don't understand music.
this week we're answering questions.
Hooray.
Hello and welcome to Whose Line Is It Anyway? The show where everything's made up and the points don't matter. That's right, the points are something you'll never see, like Pat Buchanan in the White House.
But before you do that, Ben, you know what it's time for.
Is there a jingle that plays, or?
We don't have one yet. I haven't. If you have a jingle,
Yeah.
if you have a jingle,
It's what are we listening to?
yeah. But if you want to make us a jingle, we'll give you a shout out. And we'll put it
Because
at
in
the
my
start of
mind,
every
whenever
episode.
you say, what's the time is it now, a jingle plays in my head.
It's same, though we don't have a jingle.
Yeah.
If there was a jingle, it'd be like, I'm trying to think of like how the
Be lots of xylophones.
yeah, it'd be
Or
like
a ukulele.
a ukulele. Oh, like it'd be
be
strumming there being like,
that.
what are we listening to? What are we listening to?
God.
Every week, ding ding ding
Oh,
ding
God.
ding, and you'd be like, good.
Well, that's what it's going to be now.
Oh, great. Yeah, if you want to mix this together, some kind of a jingle,
If you wanna
just
do our
put
work
it,
for
put it
us.
on, put it on YouTube and tweet it to DCM_works.
Do our work for us.
And yeah, if that's something that you have
We'll
time
throw you a
for,
buck.
we'll definitely put your
I'll give
name.
you one of my 7 copies of...
You know what? We'll send you a free T-shirt because we can do that because
Oh,
we
we
have a
can.
T-shirt shop at redbubble.com
Very true.
/people/DCMworks.
You haven't even...
Look at me with my integration.
If you do that, you'll officially have more free t-shirts than I've gotten even.
You can buy. I keep forgetting. I've got an order of about 8 that I'm supposed to put through for all of the crew
I
members
still
that
haven't
I
even
still
got
haven't
a
done.
t-shirt.
I still haven't.
Nah.
Mine is still in that cart. Like I just haven't hit purchase yet. 'Cause I
Oh,
keep
right,
forgetting.
yeah.
Like they're all there. I've got everyone's sizes. They're all ready to go. I've got a shirt for everyone. I've got a mug for some other. I just haven't
man.
done it yet because
Mugs.
I'm fucking forgetful. But this week, what are you listening to, Ben?
I watched Thank You for Smoking, which is a really funny movie.
It's so good, isn't
It's
it?
2005?
One of my favorite films.
Yeah.
The guy who plays Harvey Dent is in it.
Yeah,
It's such a good film.
it's really good.
I remember loving that. Yeah, it's great.
It's
Clever. It's funny.
really well written.
It's witty.
yeah.
It's
It's just fun.
It's a great film.
It's like no one's the good guy. Like even the senator is a complete cunt.
Everyone's in that
Everyone's an
film is a
arsehole.
bastard.
Yeah. And it's, shows like that where you still like the character is like it's good shit. Some good
despite
shit.
of the
Yeah.
What else? Anything good?
Playing Dragon's Dogma some
Yep.
more.
Yes.
And Downwell, which came out
Down
today
well. Yes,
on
good.
mobile.
On the mobile device.
Playing that on the bus.
Put it on your phone. He's like, play it on the bus over here. It was alright. Was it good?
Fun. Yeah.
It's good.
It drains my battery though.
Yeah. Saps your bat.
Yeah.
as they say and as the kids say. It's the kid lingo.
Yeah.
What have I been listening to? I finished The Name of the Wind again, finally. Forgot how much I love that shit. It's so good. I finished it last night at like 10 p.m. and immediately picked up the next book and started reading. Since I'm kind of whore.
Yeah.
My completely legal American VPN worked again this week, so I've been rewatching more of Californication on Netflix.
Completely legal.
Totally legal
Quote,
and not at
unquote.
all illegal.
No, they're legal.
Not
it's
to
just
access the Netflix servers.
no. That's just against.
Not that I
terms
do
of
that.
service.
Not that I do that.
No,
That's
no one
just,
does that.
What? That's crazy.
Yeah, no, of course not.
Yeah, I watched that. I rewatched Fellowship of the Ring after all of our Lord of the Rings talk. I'm gonna do one a week if I have time.
Yeah.
And just go through like the Hobbits
It's a
eventually.
good film.
Yeah.
Ew, go
Well, no,
through
like
the Hobbits.
no, like I'll go through 3 Lord of the Rings one a week and then the Hobbit ones. I want to see if I like them again a second time around. I'm not sure I will.
I mean, they're literally prequels as well. Like and they suffer the exact same problems as the prequels.
I just
like
like
we're just not as rabid about
it's
this
just-
because I guess we don't care.
well, no, it's because they weren't as bad. As
No,
the prequels. That's the
they were
thing.
just like not good.
What else have I been listening to? Oh, I just had it. Now it's gone. Wasn't TV. Oh,
Rip.
games. I've been playing more of the Darkest Dungeon. I
I've-
finally got past like the first little bit of the game after like 13 hours.
Yeah,
It's so hard.
it's a ridiculous game.
It's the best. It's so clever.
Yeah.
You get to this point where like you level up a character. You're like, oh my god, I finally got them to like this level. And you're like, great, I'll take them with my rookies on the weak missions. And some of the really strong people, if they have the arrogant stat, will be like, no, I'm not going. That's too easy. And it happened to be last night.
You're
I
like,
just stared at my screen. I was like stunned. I was like,
That's brutal.
So I have like 4 level 3s, which is insanely high.
Yeah.
And then like 8 level 0s that I'm like, I don't know what to do now. Like I wasn't expecting this. So the game continues to fuck with me.
Yeah.
But that's what we've been listening to. So this week we're just answering questions because I am completely unprepared and I've been very busy.
Pretty much.
I've been writing and editing videos all week.
It's a very lazy episode.
Yeah, but that's fine. Sometimes you just gotta kick back.
Yeah.
So
Kick back,
wherever you
drink
are,
some water.
grab a beer, put up your feet, or wine, or water, or coffee, whatever it is, whatever your drink of choice is. Unless you're at work, don't kick up your feet or have a beer. Probably keep working. But
Or just
nonetheless,
listen to this in the background.
yeah. Well, no. I mean, you can listen to it at work. Just don't kick your feet up at work and drink a beer because you might get fired.
Yeah, kick your feet down and
Kick your feet down. Get back to work.
drink.
dickhead.
Yeah.
Yeah, get to work, but keep us in your ear holes. So basically, what I did was I went through email and Twitter. I collated some questions. And so this is what it is. And if you want to send us questions, you can tweet us at DCM_works, or you can email us at podcast@DCMworks or podcasts@DCMworks. And
Yeah,
that's
both
all,
of them work.
Or DCM.works. beg your pardon.
reasons.
They're all in the show notes, all that stuff.
Yep.
And I've started following hashtag AFA pod as well, because a few people tried to tweet me through there. I was like, we don't follow that hashtag, but we do now.
Yeah, I didn't think we'd have a hashtag at
About
all.
4 people tweet, like I think one person tweeted using it, and then 3 other
And then
people saw
just
it. And I'm like, oh,
followed?
that's what.
No,
And I was like, damn it, now I have
Whoops.
to follow this. So it's hashtag AFA pod.
Fair
if
enough.
you want to send us questions, or just at DCMworks us. DCM_works on Twitter. So the first question comes from Jeb in Sydney. Jeb is in JEB. And it comes to us
Jeb.
via email.
As in like Jeb Bush.
As in like Jeb Bush.
Ugh.
Less.
I'm sorry.
He seems better than Jeb Bush,
Alright.
though. Just based on the fact
Sorry
that he lives in Sydney.
I'm sorry that your name got ruined.
Yeah, I'm sorry, bro. That's a rough. That's rough.
That's brutal.
So he says, "Hey jerkwads." So less sorry, actually,
Yeah,
because you upload
no.
that. Got your content through seeing your video essay on Batman and the one about the ocean game. You know my favorite
The
thing.
Ocean Game.
You know my favorite thing. You know my favorite thing about our viewers currently, all of
Oh,
you crazy
God.
kids at home,
That's funny.
is that Jeb took the time to send this really lovely question, but did not take the time to glance at his browser and be like, what's the game called?
Subnautica.
So he's like, the ocean
Oh
game.
god, that's funny.
I really like your stuff and listen to all your podcasts! ! Keep up the top work, Jeb. There was no question in there, I've just realized. I dictated these during my lunch break at work. There was not a question there, but we
Nice.
appreciate the positive feedback,
Cool.
Jeb.
Thanks.
And I'll surely respond to you personally via email. Probably not, though, because I'll forget. But thank you. That's lovely.
Thanks for thanks. Maybe I didn't say the word enough. The name of the game enough in the Ocean video.
I don't know, man.
Maybe we should just go back and redub it.
Maybe
and
Jeb's
just say
just fucking with
Subnautica
you.
every second.
You're like... you're like, this game, instead of that, it's just like... And as you go down further and further...
In Subnautica.
Definitely proves that it's... okay, so this next question comes from Sal. who comes to us from Earth via email.
Wow.
Very, very good, very funny. I like it.
Hilarious.
Very good.
10/10.
He says holla holla, which is a good introduction. Is that should we pick an official greeting of the show? Should we have one? It's definitely not holla holla. But like we should have one.
It's hey dickheads.
I mean, I feel like it is, right?
It is. That's what it is.
Or it's any regular greeting followed by dickheads.
Yeah.
Like
or
that's
or if you want to get really abusive, you can use like
dickheads full stop.
Yeah.
Not even an intro.
Just-
Dickheads full stop. Enter.
Yeah, it's like it's just that's just our name. It's just dickheads. To who it may concern.
To dickheads whom it make it.
Yeah.
To dickheads who are concerned.
Yeah.
Okay. So Sal says, David always talks about narrative structure. Was wondering
Because he's a writer.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Was wondering how this can translate to games writing and dev,
fuck.
as I'm in the middle of starting to get into games writing as a career. Any advice or suggestions?
Fuck, I don't know. I'm not a games writer. Games
Okay.
writing's hard because you have to I mean, you have to sort of think about what the game play is because you don't want to create just it's called narrative dissonance.
Yes.
Where like you'll be saying one thing in the story and then the character will do something completely different. The Tomb Raider reboot is kind of a little bit dissonant.
It's got a bit of that, yeah.
It's like, oh, she's like scared and she doesn't know an environment, and then she kills 20 people with a bow.
Yes.
It's like, okay, it's like we get it. You know, they're making a story, but like the gameplay doesn't follow.
Yeah.
So that's one thing you got to look out for.
On that, before I mean, we'll get into this in a bit of depth in a second, but that is a good example because there's a really easy fix for that, which is that the games writer looks at that sequence and goes, huh. So in the storyboarding, right?
Yeah.
Because this happens in story, but they storyboard the story and they storyboard elements of the gameplay into it. So they're like, in this section, there'll be a shooting gallery section, or it'll be you're running away from a fighting a bear or whatever it is. In that case, you would shift the tone of Lara from being like, I'm scared, it's bad. You'd be like, I'm scared enough to murder some cunts.
Yeah, you have to set it up well.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean...
It's just all about knowing what your mechanics are doing to the story, essentially.
And what they're doing to the way that the player is perceiving the story as well.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing. But as far as any advice, I mean, I looked into getting into games writing for a while. The reason I ended up not doing that is that the best way to get into games writing is to become a successful writer.
Yeah. Like, you need to be a good writer.
So you go, here are my 4
like,
published books, hire me.
Yeah,
and they go, here's a salary to do something for us, you know.
Yeah, it's not like it's a different skill. It's the same skill, but there's just more to it, more than anything.
It's kind of like if you to me, it's sort of the difference between learning to ride like a mountain bike and going mountain biking.
Yeah.
They're similar skill sets, but one of them is just the next step of that.
Yeah.
So it's a direction you can take your writing. But I think the way that, assuming that Sal is already writing, because that's kind of the way that this question reads, I'm guessing that you've got a rough idea of what kind of writing you want to do. So my suggestion, something else you can do is you can write treatments of game scripts and just send them to indie developers and be like,
oh yeah,
do you want to make my game?
Any developer that sees like a cool script will just be like, yes,
yeah,
it's be cool.
If you're like, okay, this studio makes, say Ken Levine's in your studio, the guy that did BioShock, when he starts that, you can be pretty damn sure that it's going to be something to do with first person, and it's going to have some kind of a fantastical element and some kind of a steampunk.
It's going to basically just be more.
Yeah. You know that, but we know that, which is fine, right?
More Atlas Shrugged.
Yeah, so we know that.
Yeah.
So what you can do is you could write a treatment of a script. I'm not saying send it to Ken Levine because he won't read it, but if that, as an example, you could send him a script that would suit that style of game.
Yeah.
And be like, hey, what do you think? Chances are they won't read it, but if they do, you know.
They read the script. Good job.
Yeah, but also when you do that, just look into like the copyright. Like make sure that it's clearly copyrighted to use. So
another important thing, I guess, with games writing is who the main character is. Because especially if you're going with like, so like, you know, stories in games usually go hand in hand with like RPGs. Usually, not always, but like it's pretty common.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to look at where the industry is heading with RPGs anyway. Because if you were like, oh, I want to give a story to like Bethesda for one of their games, you will literally not be able to give the main character a name because their games are all based around making your own
creating your own character.
Whereas if you were going to BioWare, you would actually flesh out everything really well.
You have every character.
You'd create a world, and then you would point a finger at who the main character is and say they're the main character, and then they would go, okay.
They're
and
like,
then
great, because
follow that
it's in
person.
context.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the other, I think something that's important to note as well with the, particularly with Bethesda, I think as an idea, if we're going to take that as a running point. When I was doing my Fallout video for the Power Armor, one of the things that I discovered in my research is that during their concept art phase, so when they were first conceptualizing the game, those of you who don't know, concept art is like the first, you basically come up with an idea for a game, say it's Bethesda, and then, that you storyboard like a few ideas, and then you throw a bunch of paper and some writing and some notes at a concept artist, and you say, show us what this might look like.
Yeah.
And they spend 2 weeks, and they go, here's what your game could be. And you go, we want that, get rid of that, do that again, try this again, let's try this tone, but, It's like the first visualization of a concept. So one of the things that was really fascinating about the process with Fallout 4 is that some of the early concept art is sort of, you can almost see, and this is pretty common. So, one of the artists had done this painting of, it was the Vault Dweller. So I think you're called the Lone Survivor in this one.
Yeah.
And so the Lone Survivor is standing atop like a bunch of junk, and there's a car that's fallen through like a skyscraper and is sort of suspended above them, and they're walking through the hole that's created between the suspended car and the junk.
Yeah.
And the dog is there, and the sort of the buildings come out behind it, and there's some ghouls and stuff, and some remnants of some ghouls, and it's actually almost lifted as an area in the game later on.
Yeah.
So something to note with your games writing is that you should be thinking about, you got a lot of like what it's going to physically look like, because as a writer it's easy to
sort of be vague.
To be vague, because you prickle with recognition, someone fills in the blanks. We know what a pirate ship looks like, we know what a sword looks like or whatever. But in a game, and particularly in scripts, you have to give in like 3 words a sense of the area.
Yeah.
So it has to be like, Vault Dweller travels to Diamond City. Diamond City is built, travels to Diamond City, settlement built inside baseball stadium, very reminiscent of blah, blah, blah. Feels like blah. Then you move on with the you can't linger on details, so you got to really carefully pick the stuff you choose to describe in game scripts.
Yeah.
And a great example of the way to do this is go and look. It's online somewhere. Go and look at the first BioShock script for the first BioShock game. It's out there somewhere because I've read it. Really interesting read. You kind of look at the way that it's been constructed. It's really different from what you'd expect.
Yeah.
It's very like heady and gloomy and like weirdly sort of retro-y art deco.
Yeah. Well, the game's
and the game is like that, but you don't expect that in the script.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting. And like even to the point where one of the super interesting things about that script is that every now and then when there's a pause in action, he'll talk about the water. So he'll be like, I can't think of what the protagonist is called in that. It's like Jack or something like that. I'm not sure. I can't remember. It's a nameless protagonist.
BioShock 1.
Yeah. But they give it a name in the
Jack.
script. I can't remember.
I don't know.
I think they call it Jack after Fight Club. I can't remember. Or whatever it is. But yeah, one of the things he does a lot in the script is he'll describe the sound the water's making.
Yeah.
So like it'll be like a whole scene, and there'll be a break, and then it'll be like water gushes from overhead and patters down behind you, or it'll just be like the word drip in between 2 lines of dialogue.
Yeah.
And that's a tonal thing, but it's also a visual thing, but it's also a gameplay thing. So there's this kind of...
And you really... yeah, and the thing with that is that when you write something like that, you're being super explicit. Like, if you were reading a book and, it had, like, between every line of dialogue the word drip, you'd be physically reminded every single time that, there's water dripping constantly. But when you're sort of playing the game, you get to a point where you stop noticing it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with most games writing, you have to be really explicit, because at each time the script is taken and like turned into something that's closer to the game, like the dialogue is recorded or like the visuals are actually built, you kind of lose like the sort of like tonal, like the really explicit tonal descriptors that you get with writing, but you gain a lot more fidelity, obviously. So you have to really try to nail the tone early on so that you don't get to the end and then there's nothing. It's just like bland and boring.
Yes.
Which is why a lot of games are like, oh, the theme's interesting, but it's just boring. There's nothing to it. You know, it's the difference between like some crappy first-person shooter that's super boring and like System Shock 2. It's like System Shock 2 is like super like heavy tonal and like to the point where, you know, the people behind System Shock 2, especially like the soundtrack and the dialogue, they're all from this one band. So there's this one band of like 6 people where like the drummer did all of the like pretty much all of the soundtrack, and then like the female vocalist was the voice of Shodan, and then like the rest of the band were like just the other dialogue from like audiobooks and stuff. And it's like when you sort of like take that idea of like, you know, we're gonna make all our dialogue and sound effects from this one group of people, it makes the whole experience of like this is a really deep and dark game like a lot more cohesive, because you're kind of taking it from one place, and you have to sort of nail that in the script, because that's the first point where it's sort of
it's
because like if you know, if you're not told in the script that, oh, we want to have this sort of theme, someone might not have the idea of, oh, why don't we just source like a band to get them to do pretty much all the audio, because then it'll be a really cohesive like feeling. Obviously you don't want to just do that for every game, just get a band and get them to do all your audio, because that's, you know, it's kind of weird. But there was like sort of like a special circumstance of where they were like, we need this sort of feel, so they found like a really like grunge electro rock band. It was basically like Nine Inch Nails, but like a rip-off Nine Inch Nails band. So that kind of sound, they just got those guys and made them do all the sound, and then System Shock 2 sounded amazing, and then the visuals were like whatever, like 98 visuals, typical, you know.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So it's like you want to try to
convey that.
Yeah, you want to convey that with the script really early.
Yeah, I mean, that's
especially when you have like a game designer reading a script. Like, we're terrible at reading. So we'll read the script and we'll be like, okay, like, because we think in mechanics. So it's like, we can see how this would play, but unless you're really explicit where it's just like, I want it to feel like this, most developers won't think of like ways to implement that feeling.
Yeah.
And implementing like a mechanic that conveys a feeling is like what makes a game really good. Like,
the other thing as well is I think game writing scripts also read quite differently, because in a film you have to do transitions and you have to do pickups and stuff. In a game, your job as the writer is just like the shape of the story.
Yeah.
And plus the person reading it isn't like they're not filmmakers and they're not scriptwriters. So the games designer reading it isn't being like, they're not visualizing a fade in.
Yeah.
When you write fade in, that's just extra words to them. So keep it trimmed to the point where it's like, use the words that you're using to the best effect you possibly can.
Yeah, and you have to, when you're writing like a long story, you have to be aware of what's going to happen between like parts of your story. And if you have a really long like period of time and you want to have like similar tone at the end of like similar tone across that period of time, like you have to kind of think like, can I fill this in so that the tone like either stays consistent, which is kind of boring, or like, can I write in story notes that kind of dip and weave
and it will take
the
us
tone,
back to that
but then take me back to the tone that I want at this part. Because, you know, when you talk about games are long. They're like 10, 20-hour experiences. So you can't just go, and it's not like films where you can just cut and like get rid of like 10 years of time in a fade cut, because you can do that and have the same sort of tone. It's like with games, you kind of have to fill that in, unless you do a 10 years later, which is stupid. You shouldn't do that.
Yeah, which would be odd, because games are all about that. I mean, you can,
and like games do it,
to...
but it's a very movie feeling thing where it'll probably just pull most people out of the experience.
Unless it's in the inciting hook. So like in that inciting incident, you can have you know, if it was like a detective story, so say like Luther, which is a TV show, the opening hook of that show is that you get this incident that happens to a detective. He's put on forced leave, and you pick up 3 years later.
Well, the video game equivalent of that is when you start off with the character which has all of the character's abilities, and you just play with this super overpowered character.
Yeah.
And then like
Assassin's
something
Creed.
happens. Yeah, literally every adventure game does this.
Don't do it.
It's a decent mechanic if you know how to do it, because it gives you an insight of like, this is what I'm gonna feel like. It works in like Metroidvanias.
Yeah.
Like pretty much every Castlevania game does it. Pretty much every Metroid game does it, because Metroid needs to do it for story reasons. Because like as a bounty hunter, like Samus, she has all the gear when she lands, but it's like, why can't I just? But the part of the game is gaining all the gear again, so they always do this stupid thing where it's like, oh, your suit has lost all its power, and you're like, great.
The Gibble rays took away your powers.
But like that's like the video game equivalent of like, it's like you don't have to go just like, 10 years later where he's been out of the job for so long, and the detective comes in and says, oh, we need you back.
You back.
You can do that in other ways. And
I mean, you can do that, but I mean, I think what you said is good though, because I think
that's a more game way of doing it as well, because it's interactive. It's like, okay, I feel powerful. I mean, and then it's like, oh no, I've just lost all that power, and I want it back.
What you're doing in that, and I talk about this in my. I just finished a video up the other night on the psychology of clickbait.
Yeah,
which has a lot to do with like hooks and stuff.
Yeah,
and part of the research of that is looking at the narrative, inciting hooks and stuff and stories. But one of the things you do, and you'll notice this in like pulp novels, is that what they'll have is as like a prologue or like a preface, they'll have an out of context snippet of action from like the big climax of the book.
Yeah,
and it'll be like everything is happening, like the main character, there's some big action set piece, and it cuts off, and then it's like. You start not even that, but you just start the book normally. Yeah. It'll be like chapter 1, and it's that character before. I think
Aragon does that as well.
Yeah,
I remember Aragon doing that.
Normal, and what you do is you add that in after the book is complete, because what you're doing is you're saying to your reader, you're basically, and this is true of games, you're making a promise to the person that they're, because committing to a book these days is a long, like if you picked up one of my novels, you're committing to, 300,000 words. Yeah. Or actually, at the moment, it's more like 700,000. But like you're committing to a lot of book.
Yeah.
So I need to make sure that up front, I promise that this is what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to deliver on this action or whatever it is. So in a game, you can do the same thing, but you do it with the gameplay mechanic instead of the story.
Yeah.
Or you can do it with the story.
Can do it with the story, but it's not as fun.
But it can kind of be weird sometimes as well.
Yeah. Some people might be like, when you do it with the story, the players feel like they weren't in control.
Yeah.
But if you do it with the game mechanic, players will be like, players won't feel as cheated, because they'll be like, oh, like me as a player, I fell into this trap.
Yes.
Like you can even games try to do it with like the boss fight you have to lose in kind of thing, where it's just like, you will die to this boss kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like Dark Souls does it a lot, where you'll be at a boss, or I think Bloodborne does it a bit more. You'll come across an enemy and you'll be like, fuck, and it'll just whoop your ass, and then you'll die, and then you'll realize, oh, like something has opened up, like for me to
it offers you another opportunity.
Like at the start of the game
successful.
with that wolf, that where you have literally no gear, and it kills you,
and
obviously,
then you get a sword,
and then you die, and then you get a gear, and you go kill it. And when you see the first boss and you die, and then you go back and, oh, I can level up now.
Yeah.
Like
it's it's the same promise system where you basically, I think particularly in games writing, like you want the person reading the script to understand that you know what you're doing. So you have to make that promise early on.
Also, a good thing with games is that difficult thing with games is that you can if you can write in like a way that the player can fail without it being just like, just rewind time a bit and try again. Like it was like an article or a video or something where they are talking about in Uncharted 2, there's like this segment where Nathan Drake is like on a boat and it's sinking, and he's gonna like jump off the boat onto another one.
Yeah.
And he says, I only got one shot at this. And you run. And if you miss like the ladder you're meant to grab, you die and you restart literally 10 seconds before. Again, he says, I only got one shot at this. And it's like there's nothing wrong with that writing if you as a player can't fail. But because you can fail, if someone dies and goes back and gets retold, I only have one shot at this, when they know they can just try as many times as they want. And it just kind of it's kind of jarring.
And
it pulls you out.
There's ways to write around that. Like the best from recent memory, no, it's not a recent game, but Call of Juarez Gunslinger. The way that they fix that problem is that they frame the narrative as someone telling a story.
Yeah.
So the whole game is
Oh yeah,
you.
and they did the whole like, oh, actually,
It's a dude in a bar telling a story, and
he's
like sometimes
oh,
you're coming.
I'm mistaken.
Yeah,
kind
you're
of-
on sort of, but you'll come across a boss and like you'll kill them instantly, and someone in the bar will be like, "Wait, that's not how that happened. Like you're lying." And he's like, "All right, fine, I'll tell you what really happened." And then you go back, and he's like, and then you'll the segment will be different, and you'll
Yeah.
do it again in a different way, and then you come to the boss, and it's like sort of interesting hooks like that, or I think that's the best example I can think of is like you can use framing devices to alleviate that.
Yeah. Or you can just
Or-
make player failure part of the narrative.
Or you can make the player failure feel really harsh. Like the best example is The Last of Us. When you die in that game, it is brutal because I've died twice, I think, in my playthrough so far.
Yeah.
But it is the fear of death is more powerful than the death. Like the death itself is brutal.
Yeah.
But you're more anxious to die because you're in the narrative and you're trying to stay alive because that's what the narrative requires.
Yeah, that's an interesting, like, because The Last of Us is kind of like a very heavily more interactive Walking Dead game.
Yes.
And in The Walking Dead, you're not as worried about your character's death because you know that you'll kind of be, like, you're not in full control. So you can kind of relax a little bit, like, just go with the flow. And if you die, it's, like, not that big a deal. You just go back a little bit. But because in The Last of Us, you're in control of every single action, there's a lot more tension because you have the same kind of, like, emotional attachment to the characters that you do in something like The Walking Dead. So you don't want anyone to die.
Yeah.
And you have to do everything
I think
because it's an action game, essentially.
there's this element of it too where you don't want to take too much damage because you have such a limited equipment
Yeah.
that you're afraid that if you get injured too badly in this fight, the next one's going to be much harder.
Yeah.
You get this weird, like, you kind of create it in your own head where you get anxious to waste equipment, but because the next fight will be harder and you don't want anyone to get hurt, and it's this weird, like, the narrative gets into your head.
And because The Last of Us is in a naturally sort of dangerous place, there's sort
Setting,
of
yeah.
like the idea of you can have like gaps in your narrative because the time between the gaps will have its own like natural flow of like tension because the game's just like the game systems are just built really well.
Yes.
So you kind of got to know what your game is and talk a lot to the designers to be like, you know, if we're having long stretches of time, how can we make them not boring?
And the other thing that is interesting, and this is of storytelling as a whole, is when you do a pickup. So a pickup basically is where after any break of a scene, some unexpected length of time has passed until the next scene. So like, if your narrative up to this point has been like pretty chronologically, like the biggest gap you've had might be like 3 or 4 days, but you've explained what happened during that time. A pickup is when you have a narrative break and then you're like, it's a month later and stuff's changed.
Yeah.
The best way to do that is to think about the most unexpected thing that could have happened in that month, and you can make it part of the narrative drive. You don't necessarily have to say what it is. You don't have to be like, okay, so it's been a month and all of these things happened. What you can do is you can have two characters who were previously really good friends barely talking to each other.
Yeah.
And you can be like, whoa, what? Hang on, what happened? And then the narrative drive becomes... so narrative drive is anything that, as a reader, you want to find out. It doesn't have to be like a mystery. So it might be like, whatever happened to the box that Ben had that was his favorite box that's gone now? Or what's... One of the best narrative drives in any piece of fiction ever is in this short story where there's this bunch of people going on a camping trip, and someone puts a box in the boot,
Yeah.
but no one, like, everyone kind of talks around the box, like, they don't talk about the box, and all the characters try not to touch it,
Yeah.
and you're like, what's in the box? And it lasts for the whole narrative. You're like, what's in the fucking box? And it becomes, like, this obsession, and you start being like, what's in the fucking box? Like, I need to find out. You become obsessed, and that becomes part of the narrative drive is, what's in the box? Why is everyone avoiding it? So you can do the same thing in a game where it's like, I'm trying to think of a good example, but like, say in Skyrim, if you got the dragon shout powers, but you didn't know where they came from, that'd be a good narrative drive. Because you'd be like, hang on, how did that come to be?
The one thing you have to be careful about that, and it's the main difference between like other forms of media and games, is that as a player, you are playing a character that lives in that world.
Yes.
So if you make a passage of time, unless the player character wasn't present, like was somewhere else for that like period of time and they come back, you kind of have to be careful of like having the player character have knowledge that the player doesn't, and you can get around that by sort of having a way of like giving like one-way knowledge, like having like maybe if you have like your character has like a journal that they keep in their backpack that you can just read at points, and you know you make some, you know, and every now and then they'll write something down, you can read it, and it's like a one-way knowledge trail. And if like after this whole period of time where something's happened and like you don't know what's happened but your player character does, you could, you know, you want to have some sort of mechanic where it's like the player character can tell the player what's been happening without the player having to kind of like walk around this world and have the player character ask other characters questions
that the
player
know.
character should already know.
And
then, because the only way to get around that is to write in dialogue, like stupid, dumb dialogue, which is like, oh, you should know this, but I'll tell you anyway. It's like, no, God.
I mean, you can... The best way to do that is to show, and like, I mean, obviously it's not a great example because the game itself is so story-based, but in The Last of Us, you start in summer, and you go to autumn, and then eventually winter. There's a break between autumn and winter of like a week or so, I think, when it starts to get really cold.
Yeah.
And none of the like Joel and Ellie don't go, oh, it's winter now, but they're wearing long sleeve shirts. They're like a plaid, like wool plaid or whatever. Yeah. It's starting to snow, and Joel looks cold all the time.
Yeah,
and Joel's beard is a bit longer, so you're like, oh, it's clearly winter now.
Yeah, when you have sort of simple changes like that, which you can just show, like obviously you can do that, but when you have, if something like really, if you want to like sort of build up the tension of like, oh, there's something that's happened and you don't really know what, obviously the best way to do it is just have the player character not there, so you find out with the player character. But you know, it's you kind of,
or you can, I mean, there's ways to do it that are sort of a little, and this is easier in like novels, obviously, in long fiction, but so in The Name of the Wind, which I've just finished rereading, the big thing across all three books, and they're mammoth books, like they're really thick. The biggest mystery is the main character, who's this kind of retired hero, burnt out hero who now owns a bar and like has seemingly lost all of his powers and his intelligence and majesty or whatever. He kind of refers to this war that's going on, and you see the impacts of the war in the land they live in. They live in like this rural farming town. Like, people are starting to starve, and like the roads are getting really dangerous with bandits and blah 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 blah. And people are enlisting to help fight for the king or whatever.
Yeah.
And a few times the main character alludes to the fact that he, in some way, he thinks he refers to the fact that he feels that he's to blame for the war, but at no point is he like, and here's why. But it becomes the narrative drive throughout the three. It becomes part of the narrative drive. So there's two things. You don't know what happened to the woman that he was in love with, and you don't know what he means when he thinks that he's at fault for the war that started. But both of those things become like, they kind of like Patrick Rothfuss breadcrumbs you a little bit to give you more bits of information to keep you interested.
Yeah.
So what you can do in your game, and this works particularly well in the first BioShock, not as much in Infinite, because the gameplay in that doesn't. There's a lot of distance between the gameplay and that. So much between the gameplay and the
Infinite's
story.
really brutal.
Infinite would be...
It's a good game, it's a good story, but it's not a good game
Infinite
and a good story together.
Infinite would be a perfect game if
it had zero combat.
If you didn't shoot anyone.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before, but if you didn't... Yeah. Someone the other day, I don't know if it's still out there, but someone was looking at putting together a stitched version of that game where they were trying to mod out a lot of the combat and make some of it just into like really simple quick time events.
Yeah.
So that first piece of combat.
Well, that's effective. But then it just turns into BioShock 1.
And then the best way they could have done it is if you basically just walked through the world and you learned about the world. And every now and then, like, you might get ambushed by some dudes and you would have to make a decision as to kill them or run or something.
Yeah, and they should just make it, like, cute. You know.
Yeah.
BioShock Infinite.
I don't know what I was saying. Yeah, so you can kind of breadcrumb it. I mean, look into narrative drive, just if you Google that. There's sort of some research you can do. But I think as far as games writing, to kind of wrap up the question... yeah, like read some game scripts. Start writing all kinds of screenplays and scripts and stuff. Like it's good practice to try and look at
good examples of well-written games.
And look to write it for a type of game. Like, write your script for a type of game.
You find a lot that like well-written games will be based off sort of like well-written literature, but the difference between like just like a copy and something that's actually good is that they'll do something interesting with the medium of games. So like
yeah, it'll affect the story in some way.
yeah, so like
Dark Souls.
yeah, well, like Bloodborne's basically Lovecraft, but it's like they add mechanics to make it like
Its
more
own thing.
Lovecraft, and then you have like Spec Ops: The Line's basically Apocalypse Now, but you have like the whole dissonance between the player actions and like what they like. It's like what you feel in your consciousness and what the game sort of makes you do. So that's like another like use of gameplay mechanics. So there's lots of good examples to just check out and see how to make good game
It's a good game.
stores.
Make a good
stories.
game script story or novel.
Yeah.
Next question comes from Serious
Oh,
Cornrows.
Jesus, I forgot we're doing questions.
Yeah, questions. Next question comes from Serious Cornrows, who is at Too Serious Hair for You.
Serious cornrows.
There's some numbers in there.
That's
Hashtag AFA pod. What are your 3 favorite things in the world? Peace out, dickheads.
3 favorite
3
things.
favorite things in the world.
I
I know these immediately.
I love Honey Puffs.
Yep.
It's a cereal.
1. Good.
This is rough. 3
Ben's
favorite
looking,
things
he's
in the
looking bloody
world.
wistful, mate.
I don't know, like comfortable underwear.
2. Good underwear.
Yeah,
2.
good
You
underwear's great.
Hit. You gotta hit one more.
And shit. Like, fuck. This is a tough one.
It's tough. It's tough.
You know, like when you do your feet peel, like the skin on your feet peel.
No.
I get that like once a year, where just like I'll just shed skin from my feet.
No, I've got like
And
I've
it's the
still got
most
gross cow's growing feet.
Oh god.
Yeah.
But like it's the most satisfying thing, just like peeling skin off your feet.
That's
So
3,
it's my
that's 3.
favorite 3 things in the world.
Strange. I'm a man of very simple pleasures.
Yeah.
Like it's those of you who've listened to my content for a while. So my DCM.
The 3 favorite things would be. Wait, no, I'm trying to think. No, you keep.
No, you go. You guess mine.
I only
You
had
guess.
2. I was trying to think of the 3 B's.
Guess you guess
You
mine.
got booty, blow, and something else.
Almost.
I was like, shit. What's the third one?
No, I don't have a third
Boats?
B.
I don't know.
Boats? I'm a boating man. No, I am a man of very simple pleasures. I like
Yeah,
good beer.
booty blowing. Yeah, beer, booty, and blow.
No, it's beer, coffee, and women. Those are the 3 things. Those are my.
So basically,
I like good beer. I like good coffee. I like good women. I'm a man of very. I'm not very complicated. Like people have listened to my content for a while, but no, I am a very simple man.
actually, no. I'm gonna retake one of my answers. I love like good notebooks, like really
Yeah,
nice leather
you
bound,
are a
nice paper.
Fucking stationary whore.
Like, oh, I love stationery.
Ben is a stationary whore.
I didn't used to be one, but then I dated one.
But
and
you
it
say
became
it's
one.
you could caught the infection.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
Like it's the weirdest STD that.
like I have I have like a leather bound notebook that just all my notes go in. It's nearly it's nearly full, so I'm like I'm in the market for a new one. It's like
He's on the prowl.
I love good pens.
Yeah, fair enough. So Ben's really into stationery. I like how yours are really dissonant. No, yeah, it's one of the things that you'll come to learn along the way we do this podcast. This is to people at home. Ben obviously knows me quite well, but yeah, I don't like a lot of stuff, but I know what I like.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
Real simple. Yeah, good. Okay, so
That was easy.
yeah, that was easy.
That was a lot shorter than the,
I think that
the
might have
second
been
question.
that might have been the kind of question where he was like, "I'm bloody gonna get you because you have to think about it." But this is I've known this for years. I'm like, this is the only 3 things I enjoy. Okay, so this question comes from Anonymous, and it comes to us from Toronto via email.
Ooh,
I like that you gave us where you were from, but not your name. But that's okay.
that's fine.
I'm not
We'll
gonna
track
read.
you down,
I'm not gonna read your
Anonymous
email
in
address.
Toronto.
Yeah, we'll find you, mate. We're coming. So the email says, if you guys could have one fantasy comic book game weapon, what would it be and why?
Fantasy comic book game weapon.
There were slashes in between. Those.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
I was like,
So comic
what?
book. Sorry, fantasy or comic book or game.
weapon.
I think to cover his bases. I would take Peter Quill's elemental guns from Guardians of the Galaxy.
I would take.
Because you can shoot fire, you can shoot ice, you can shoot stun guns, and you can shoot pure energy.
I'd just take the wrench from Ratchet and Clank. It's a cool.
Yeah,
It's
it's
a
a
cool
good
melee
answer.
weapon.
Yeah.
Like the wrench that gets upgraded in like the
Yeah,
later
yeah.
games. It's
Actually, can I
It's like
just
the-
take?
the coolest video game weapon's the
I
wrench.
feel like can I just take Peter Quill's equipment because he's got those cool rocket boots and that badass helmet visor that goes on his ear.
Yeah.
But I'm taking all his kit. I'm taking his coat. I'm taking his.
Yeah, he is actually really cool.
He's got the coolest. Actually, him in the comic books is way cooler.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Those of you who haven't read, so Marvel have like a new. It's not new. It's actually not that new. It's been out for like 2 years, but I've only just got around to reading it.
Well,
they kind of rebooted in inverted commas.
Would reboot it, yeah.
It was about 2.5 years ago, but I just started rereading the Guardians ones because I've been really far behind. Because I've been reading DC, trying to get through New 52, and I finished that. I'm now onto Marvel.
Yeah.
And yeah, the Guardians of the Galaxy ones, Peter Quill on that is super cool because he's got his classic red leather stuff, but he's got his rocket shoes. Whoops. He's got his rocket shoe, his rocket clippy things that goes on his boots.
His rocket Heelys.
Yeah, he's got his dope earpiece that becomes a visor that's also a radio that also lets him go in space.
Yeah,
That
it's
thing would
also
be
like
so useful.
yeah, it's like
it's the
a
best.
space helmet as well.
It's so cool. And then he's got his elemental guns, which are the coolest fucking thing.
Yeah.
Like they're so useful.
He is a cool kid. Actually.
They've got like a stun gun. You can shoot fire. You can tase people. They can shoot pure energy. They're like, it's like all of Iron Man's zapping in two things or whatever.
Yeah.
And then he's also got, for a while there, he had one of the cosmic swords that was pretty cool.
Someone has those in the movie, right?
Do they? Not
There's
sure.
There's a sword fight between
they're
Green
just
Lady and Purple
they've
Lady.
that's just swords.
There's just
She's got like a
swords?
stun baton spear, and
Yeah.
I think the green chick just has her normal blade or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's some pretty cool weapons in that Guardians, and then that's probably the best one though because it's got the most recent Captain Marvel as part of the team, and she's one of the best characters with one of the best costumes with some of the best powers. Like it's one of those things where they finally got it right. Where Guardians has been okay for many years, and they were like, what if we took the team that we're putting in the film and then added some of the better characters as well?
Yeah.
And that's what we've ended up with. So there's a good one that I'm up to now, which is called The End, ? That's what the comic book is called. And it's where like they're about to split up. The Guardians are about to split up, and it's so good. So get into that. That wasn't an answer. The elemental guns is my answer. And you'll take Ratchet's wrench?
Wrench, yeah.
Or his Ratchet's ratchet.
It's the there is a name, but I forget.
I can't remember.
It's the Omni Wrench.
Yeah.
And then it turns into like the Omni Wrench 2000, and it just keeps going up from there.
Have you played they've got a new Ratchet and Clank game coming out.
I haven't played any of the PS3 ones.
See, we have
So there's like 5 of them I haven't played.
There's tons.
I played all the OG PS2 ones.
Looking through our shit, and we like own a few of them. I don't know why. I
love
have a
those
stack
games,
of PS3 games, and I have a PS3, but I've never played it. It came with one of my TVs. That's the PS4. The PS3 is behind you.
Yeah.
It came with one of my TVs when I first bought it.
Oh wow.
Because it was a Sony TV, and they were
Yeah.
like, "There's a deal."
PS3,
I wanted the TV was on special, and they were like, "Here's your free PS3," and I went, "Wait, what?" And they're like,
Sure.
"Yeah, that's our deal." And I was like, "No, I just want the TV was on special." Like what? They're like, "Nah, it comes free," and I went, "All right, sure."
I think I remember that promotion actually.
Yeah, and so I just walked home with like a dumb PlayStation 3 that I've never used.
Nice.
I use it to stream Netflix to my TV.
Yeah, that's a good way to use it.
Although I already have
They
a
are good
Chromecast,
medium.
so I don't need it. Like it's just the weirdest. It was just the weirdest shit. But that Ben brings us to the end of the episode.
Wow.
Yeah, we somehow talked for the whole time. I don't know if we did well.
I don't know. I mean, we did spend half an hour on one question.
Good question. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much it for this episode. We did some plugs at the top, so check out all that stuff if you want to. Otherwise, you can get some t-shirts at redbubble.com/people/DCMworks.
Watch our shows.
Watch our shows.
YouTube.
All that stuff's in the show notes. Where can people find us, Ben, if they want to send us questions?
Podcast at dcm.works.
Yes, that's
or
podcast.
Podcast. I
Podcast.
don't know.
Whatever. It's in the show notes. Patreon.com/DCMworks.
Yeah, there's a Twitter somewhere.
Twitter's
Apparently,
at
we're following a
DCM
hashtag as well.
Hashtag AFA pod. If you
AFA
want to send us
pod.
questions.
Yeah.
Shit, I mean, I think that's about it. I don't... I mean, we did it somehow.
There's a YouTube somewhere.
Yeah,
DCM.works.
that'll be in the thing. Just search us up. That'll be in the show notes. Or if you look up Potato Clinic, I guess that'll come up probably.
It probably is top.
Yeah, it's up there. Let me find
I
out.
doubt anything else is called Potato Clinic.
Let's have a look.
We're doing a quick search.
I'm doing a hot search.
Yeah, YouTube it. Don't Google it yet. It won't be on Google yet.
Potato Clinic.
Are we at the top when you type in Potato Clinic?
Oh, you
yeah.
bet we are. Fuck yeah, we
Oh,
are.
yeah.
Bloody good.
That's hype.
If you search up Potato Clinic, you get
Sure.
our video, and then you get Disney car toys and their
You get...
their toy unboxing of Mr.
Oh,
Potato
no,
Head.
you get toy reviews. Oh, God.
So it goes our video.
Our video and then total shit.
It goes our video, toy unboxing, and then an episode of Porn Stars, where Sean,
Dude, I love porn
where
stars.
someone brings in a Price's potato.
Dude, I love porn
And
stars.
then-
It's
and then-
the best show.
Birth control fail. Colombian woman uses potato as contraceptive. And the picture Is Mr. Potato Head superimposed over someone's vagina?
Why?
I hate the internet. But with that nugget,
Right.
we'll see you guys next week.
Yep.
Yeah, feel free to hit us up on Patreon, Twitter, wherever. Let us know what you think, and we'll bloody catch you next week.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, wait, before we go.
Oh, what?
Whoa, I know. Before we go,
Sure.
we're actually going to record next week's episode now, because I'm going to be in Melbourne
What?
visiting the Sans Pants radio crew.
Yeah, that's happening.
So you can check out that stuff. That'll be on their
They'll
website.
be left
our
behind in
website,
Brisbane.
do all that stuff. So I'll be in Melbourne next week. So keep an eye out for the Twitter stuff. We'll be posting stuff there.
Yeah.
But so don't be tweeting at us and expecting your questions answered next week, because that ain't gonna happen. But the week after,
I'll answer them.
Ben will
I'll
tweet
do an
back
impromptu. I'll do an impromptu
bloody tweet
video.
back at you. All right.
Yeah.
Good. But yeah, otherwise we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
And like the gameplay is super fun, and like because those three things are there, it's like it's exceptionally good.
I could do it in a heartbeat and make millions, but it would feel like just gouging my soul out.
Yeah, Jurassic Park's a little more like DDR.
If Shrek is a fairy tale creature, can he actually own land and want to kick them off? Where did that come from? You have to make a lot of shit up to make good art.
Yeah.
That's just the truth of it.